Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 228th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We are on June 23rd, right in the heart of solstice country. I don't know if we've passed the solstice yet. One way or another, this is one of the longest days of the year. And we, of course, the world is never a dull moment, as the Chinese say. May you live in interesting times. We're going to start off talking about election protection with two of the truly great activists and authorities on protecting our elections, ANDREA MILLER of the Center for Common Ground, Ray MCCLENDON from Communities United, and we're going to do at least a half hour on that. Hi, Andrea, good to see you. Ray, you're with us as well. These two people are national treasures in terms of they are in terms of protecting American democracy. They got a lot to tell us specific to our democracy. When they are done with us, we'll talk a bit about Iran and Trump's petulant war here and his response to the No Kings movement. There's no doubt in my mind that the real target of the bombing of Iran was not Iran. It was the 5 million people that marched in the No Kings March. And according to his niece, the nickname they gave him, Taco, Trump always chickens out. I guess he had to prove his whatever. Manhood might be too strong a word in his case. But in the second hour, we're going to talk about the nuclear stuff. And I got to tell you that this whole idea of bombing nuclear production facilities is completely ridiculous and has done absolutely nothing to make the world safer, given that we have 440 atomic reactors operating around the world that could be taken down, any one of them, with a single drone. And I will remind people that the bomb, those of you who saw Oppenheimer, the Trinity bomb that we saw at the end, and then the one that destroyed Nagasaki, each of them required less than 15 pounds of plutonium, which basically you can get on eBay. So, the idea that taking out Iran's nuclear facilities is going to make the world safer, forget about it. I guarantee you Iran has more than enough plutonium and enriched uranium to turn Israel into a radioactive wasteland. Let's hope to God they don't do it. So we're going to come to that in the second hour. There's a lot going on with the nuclear power industry, which is breathing its last in a lot of ways. But we're going to start with these two truly great activists, ANDREA MILLER and Ray MCCLENDON, to talk to us about what's going on. I know that Trump really wanted to change the dialogue, but, you'll notice we're talking not about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, but about, 3 nuclear facilities in Iran. That's part of his agenda. So, Donald, we're not falling for it. Andrea and Ray, can you give us the updates, please, on what's going on in the world of election protection? Andrea, if you can start first, and then Ray, that would be great. Oh, we can't hear you.
For us, election protection, I'm in Virginia, so we do reasonably well. We're building a new tool. Our new platform is called the Integrated Election Management Platform, and our big concern this year will be protecting the voters who actually show up to vote in 2025. So we've taken our say something tool, added a real-time, real live video function to it so that we'll be able to see what is going on at the various we're predominantly doing Black precincts. We've got a lot of rural areas in Virginia, and we know voters are going to be showing up. We had a record number of voters for a primary election. I think it was more than 60,000 more than we had in the 2021 election, and we did not have a governor's primary at the top. So It was a good election. So this is going to be an interesting election year. Remember, in 27, Virginia was 15 seats down in the Virginia House, and the pushback was so strong. We won 14 seats in 2017 and lost seat number 15 by one vote. So there really is going to be a need to watch and protect the voters that do come out.
Well, Andrea, you're mentioning a new tool, and you do have an election coming up this fall. Is that right in Virginia, or is it this summer?
That's right. It's the gubernatorial election. It is the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney generals, so all three of our statewide offices. And for the first time in the history that anybody can remember, we've got candidates in all 100 House districts. Now, normally we have more Republican candidates than Democrats. And as I said, for the first time in history, it's reversed.
And you also have, for the first time in history, two women running for governor. Is that correct? You want to tell us about that race?
Virginia will have a woman governor. Yes.
And there's no one running for statewide office in Virginia this year named Robert E. Lee, is there? Well, I stumped you on that one, I guess.
Not really. And again, it is going to be an interesting record. It's going to be an interesting race. The Republicans have an extremely woke ticket. They've got a Black immigrant woman running for governor. They've got a gay white man running for lieutenant governor, and they have the incumbent Hispanic man for attorney general. For the first time in history, there is no one from Northern Virginia on the statewide ticket. No one.
What is that? What's the implication of that?
Well, the implication of that is, what does Northern Virginia do now that it is no longer the center of the political universe? There is no Northern Virginia on the Republican ticket, nor is there one on the Democratic ticket. The Democrats have a woman running for governor, a woman running for lieutenant governor. Both of them are from Central Virginia. And the attorney general is a Black man from our coastal area, Hampton Roads.
Now, isn't Northern Virginia where all the people live that Elon Musk fired from the federal government?
Totally untrue. Virginia has 350,000 federal workers, and they are spread throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. So there are 100,000 of them in Northern Virginia. That also means there's more than 175,000 not in Northern Virginia.
And what percentage of those federal workers lost their jobs?
I have never seen a number on the percentage by region, so I really don't know. I think the percentage of people who lost jobs was greater in Hampton Roads than it was in Northern Virginia.
Okay, so we have 108 people with us. Andrea, you mentioned you have a new tool, a new election tool. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I am calling it the Integrated Election Management Platform. And Ray is like, when are you going to release it? Because we want it down in Georgia. I'm not forgetting you, Ray. And so I will be demoing the election protection part, which is the first part that we wrote. And then ultimately, there will be a visual query tool. Pick your voters by watching a map and then choosing the voters that you want. Move them into the canvassing tool. We haven't built that yet. We're still designing that. And then in the canvassing tool, the rights to the polls tool is up, and the election protection school is up, and they're all under the same platform. So we really want people to understand when you are talking about field, you are not just talking about door knock canvassing. You're talking about getting those people who need them rides to the polls and getting out there and making sure that those people you talk into voting are actually able to vote. That is field.
What a concept. So listen, for those of you who are new and haven't been acquainted with Andrea Miller, she is the resident genius of direct democracy. Andrea, are you, and please put in the chat how people get a hold of you. We really want everybody to be in touch with Andrea Miller and Ray McClendon, as they are really leading the charge here to protect our election. I will tell you, given where we are now, however many months out from the 2024 presidential election, I am more convinced than ever that the presidential election of 2024 was not stolen, it was bought, plain and simple. If you look at the margins in the seven swing states, they are suspiciously homogeneous and homophobic, but that's a different story. But and could only have been pulled off, as far as I'm concerned, with massively financed high-tech election theft through the computerization for which Elon Musk is famous. I do not believe that Donald Trump was the legitimate winner in 2024, and we will talk about that more as we continue, so that it does not, for God's sakes, happen in 2026 and beyond. I mean,
which says, Harvey, we've got to protect our voters when they go out and vote.
Yes, we have to protect our voters and their votes, and we will in the future have Greg Palast with us back again. Greg has produced a film called Vigilantes Inc., which really showed the mass vigilante theft of the vote in Ray McClendon's state of Georgia. So, Andrea, please put your contacts in the chat if you haven't already. We have 114 people with us, but everybody needs to be in touch with Andrea Miller, who's at all interested in preserving American democracy. Those people who are assuming that the Congress is going to change in 2026 have not yet heard the bad news, which is that billions of dollars will be poured in from the tech bros and all the rest of them, and that there's no guarantee we will have a fair election unless we sign up with people like Andrea Miller and Ray McClendon. Ruth, can I get you? Ruth Strauss, go ahead, and then we'll go to Ray McClendon. Ruth, our resident Alabaman, can you jump in? Go ahead, Ruth.
Yeah. First of all, for people who are new to this, your screen is filled with 3 rock stars right now, so make note of it.
Right, Bruce Springsteen, Bonnie Raitt, and James Taylor. They'll be all later to perform.
Right,
So, stick with us.
right. Actually, it's you, Beyonce, and James Brown. But anyway,
okay.
Right. So anyway, getting serious. Those people in Virginia may have kept their jobs, but don't you remember they were going to sell the CIA headquarters or something like that? Doge was, but then they realized that's not a great idea. But anyway, I have 2 things. One is, Andrea, this business of the quote unquote woke right people, are they there to like confuse people, kind of like, Mark Johnson was in North Carolina? I mean, to putting out, baiting people to make them think that there's, quote unquote woke people on the right, but they're like closeted, almost hooded people. And then to Ray, I have heard that the Jewish lobby, and I am Jewish, in Atlanta is trying to go against Ossoff and is building a movement against Ossoff's re-election. So those are my 2 things. Thank you.
I love that question, Ruth. Winsome Sears is the Black Jamaican woman that is running for governor in Virginia. She just put out marvelous television ad. At no point does she ever say she's a Republican. At no point on any of her signs does she ever say she is a Republican. She tries to pawn herself off as a nice grandmotherly type who is very concerned and decided to get in politics, but is not a politician. And I'm like, lady, you're the incumbent, you're the sitting lieutenant governor. Give me a break. You're not a politician. Hello. And this is the same woman who, when she ran in 2021, her most famous or infamous picture of herself was she was posing with an AR-15.
Oh my God. Is she playing Bob Marley's music on her ads?
No.
Okay.
Her ads are very conservative, and she looks like a nice Black church lady.
Oh my God. All right. This is the governorship of Virginia, by the way. It is, of course,
Yes.
demographically significant that Virginia, well, one way or the other, will have its first female governor. Is that true?
That is true. That is true. So,
Okay.
and what's interesting is the current governor would not allow the attorney general or anyone else to run against her because he was figuring, I'll help her get elected, and then I'll have a second term through her. Governors in Virginia are only allowed to have one term. They cannot succeed themselves.
Well, George Wallace did that. He was governor of Alabama, and he ran out of terms, and so he got his wife elected. And then the question then was would she divorce him? But apparently she didn't. So there you go. All right. Well, thank you for that, Andrea Miller, Ray, and Ruth, Ray McClendon. Let's proceed here. Ruth had a question for you
Sluggo, real
about
quick. We have
Georgia.
somebody else on stack, DIANE Cameron.
Yeah, but she was. Well, all right, Diane, go ahead, jump in, and then Ray.
I thank you. I defer to Ray.
Okay, we'll come back to you right away, Diane. Thank you. Ray McClendon, you're in Atlanta, and you've got a lot going on there, including, of course, the aftermath of the mass challenges to voters in Georgia. Is it your belief that the vigilante movement that disenfranchised so many people had an impact on the outcome of the presidential election?
Well, the vigilante movement is a part of a concerted movement by the legislature, the state and state administration to coordinate with these MAGA vigilantes to suppress the vote. And they've got a combined operation going on. We've talked about this many times. We've seen it escalate. We know that the Secretary of State is planning to purge upwards of 500,000 voters in Georgia this summer. So that is coming, and many of these folks we know are simply have misinterpretations of addresses of bad addresses that could easily be fixed. But they're not about to fix them. What they want to do is reduce the number of registered voters. And we know that that's going to occur on top of the challenges that come from the vigilantes. So we're going to have a lot of work in front of us toward the end of the summer, going into 2026. The most important thing we've got going on right now is we've got a Public Service Commission runoff that will be on July the 15th. As you know, we had Dan Blackman on the program a few weeks ago. He was disqualified on a technicality from running in the district that represents Fulton County and DeKalb counties, two of the major counties. He has statewide name recognition, and they wanted to get him off the ballot. They're trying to get a weaker candidate in place so that the Republicans can maintain a stranglehold on the Public Service Commission. Georgia has as you know, Sluggo, has the 7th highest utility rates in the country, one of the largest cost overrun nuclear plants and facilities in the country. And there is substantial environmental injustice going on based upon what's happening with Georgia Power. Because of all of the additional power that's surging in Georgia because of data centers and development. Most of the substations, significant transformer locations, those things go in that Black neighborhood without much public input, certainly no community input from the affected communities, and without regard for impact on residential communities. So the PSC races coming up are a significant race for statewide race. They are significant statewide races for us. The first one now for District 3, the primary is down to Keisha Waits and Peter Hubbard. We're meeting with Peter Hubbard tomorrow. We hope to meet with Dan Blackman later in the week, and then we'll have some ideas for you in the next couple of weeks on what kind of guidance we want to give in that race. But it's important that we have someone strong coming out of the Democratic primary for District 3 that can go up against the Republican incumbent, who has been a rubber stamp for Georgia Power for the last almost 6 years.
So the significance, and everybody should understand, this is not some obscure race here. Nobody ever pays attention to Public Service Commission races, Public Utilities Commission in California and so on, until a nuclear plant comes and blows $36 billion that they want to stick the ratepayers with. So one of the reasons that this race in Georgia for Public Service Commission is so significant is the last 2 atomic reactors under construction in the United States just came online in Georgia at Vogtle 3 and 4 at a cost of $36 to $40 billion. And of course, the Republicans, the corporate guys, want all the charges for Vogtle to be rubber stamped. And Daniel Blackman was running who would have been a dissident on the Public Service Commission, and may have actually slipped us some information here and there. And so there's a big pushback going on. Ray, is this an election that can be protected, and what do you think is going to happen? And then we'll go to DIANE CAMERON.
Well, the election certainly can be protected. It's going to be a low turnout election, and so we need to make sure that we inform our high propensity voters to get them out. These are statewide elections, which is significant because the elections are for district positions that are elected statewide, and that strategically was done by the Republicans in order to dilute Black participation. That's the bottom line. Richard Rose, my partner in Communities United, was a named litigant in a lawsuit trying to overturn that process. We have been unsuccessful so far in being able to do that, but this is a way to dilute Black votes by having an elected representative to the PSC from Fulton and DeKalb being voted on by South Georgia residents. So that's a part of what we've got to overcome. So these people are running statewide for district races.
Right, and it's nowhere in the country probably is there an election with a higher dollar per vote value than this one in Georgia. You can have a low turnout on an election to a council, a public service commission that's going to be deciding on a $40 billion boondoggle that they slammed into Georgia.
Absolutely.
For which, by the way, Barack Obama was primarily responsible.
Absolutely. So the PSC races, we have 2 on the radar. The one in District 3, which is, as I said, is Peter Hubbard versus Keisha Waits in the runoff for the primary. That'll be on July 15th. And Alicia Johnson is running in the Democratic primary from District 2. She ran unopposed, so she will be going up against the Republican candidate. So we have two races in November that'll be statewide that the PSC will be front and center. The other
Well, we
races,
will be following that, but
yeah, and we'll try to get both of them to come on here as we get down the road.
yes, that's essential
Yeah,
because in California we get completely hammered by the Public Utilities Commission, which is completely corrupt and has allowed $11 billion from the Diablo Canyon nukes into the rate base, which is completely insane. And these two reactors could bankrupt Georgia, right, Ray?
yes, yes, no
And
question about it. No
well,
question.
let's enlist Marjorie Taylor Greene to go out there and fight for us. She's Marjorie. I mean,
Hey,
who can make up Marjorie
Sluggo,
Taylor Greene is.
you've
Go
been
ahead.
smoking too many mushrooms, man. You can't.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, I just read before I got on, has become a peace advocate.
Yeah, right.
Who would have guessed? I mean, somebody
Right,
go talk to her about the nuclear plant.
right,
Explain to her that the Georgia could be completely wiped out if Iran ever
right,
hit the Vogtle with God knows
right,
what.
right. Well, Vogel is definitely a major boondoggle, and is going to continue to be an albatross around the necks of Georgia ratepayers for the foreseeable future.
Oh my God.
The other thing I want to mention is that we don't have statewide races here other than those PSC races as is going on in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Those races in Virginia are very important because of all of the statewide offices that are constitutional offices that are up. In Georgia, though, we are having municipal races this year. So there will be substantial activity across the state in county and city election. We have the mayor of Atlanta. We'll have county commission positions. So we'll be very active in the fall as we start looking at the city and county races across the state. So we're gearing up our engagement in the key counties that we want to be active in for 2025 as we prepare for 2026. Because we know, getting back to Ruth's question, that 2026, John Ossoff's race is going to be one of the most expensive Senate races in history. It's already gearing up that way. And Republicans are already eyeing that seat. And to her point, specifically, when Ossoff stood up to oppose additional specific types of military equipment to Israel after the start of the Gaza war, then the hardline, Jewish activists came out hard against him. So that's what you're seeing emerge here. In fact, Ruth even went to Governor Kemp to encourage Kemp to run, just to show you how upset they were. So,
well, I'm getting a sense, because I'm complete. What are the odds that the Senate nominee for the Republicans in 2026 will be Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I don't think she has a shot.
All right. I'm kind of
No.
disappointed here. What the 6 Bs? I mean, I don't want to repeat them here, but All right. Well, listen, this is really fascinating. We're going to continue with this.
You still have a
Diane
question
Cameron.
from Diane Cameron.
Yeah, Diane, you've been patiently waiting. Go ahead, please. Anybody else have a question for Ray or Andrea? We are so honored to have them. And then we're going to go to Iran for a half hour. But go ahead, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you, Sluggo, and thank you, Ray and Andrea, for all the work you are doing in Georgia and Virginia. And I wanted to bring up the topic of working with labor unions and in your grassroots and grassroots work at the local and state level for these races. And I'm guessing that you already have union leaders in your networks. And one of the reasons, I have a couple reasons for wanting to highlight the role of unions. One is that I just read in the newsletter, Labor Notes, which I recommend to everyone. It's an awesome newsletter about what's going on with the labor movement. On May 1, on May Day this year, there were demonstrations nationwide, and along with strikes. So there's actually a lot of strike activity going on. There's a lot of beautiful trouble being made, and so there's action and energy there that we can tap into for this electoral work. And then the second reason that I'm bringing up unions is that a lot of people are not aware that roughly a week ago, the Democratic National Committee ousted 2 union presidents who had been serving on their Rules Committee, but now they have quit under pressure because they got demoted off the Rules Committee. That's Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, and Lee Saunders, president of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. So I think we actually have a crisis within the Democratic Party with them ousting these union leaders.
Right, and they also got rid of David Hogg, who became an activist at the Parkland shooting in Florida, who's been on the calls with us. And, we want to get these people working with us. So if you got any contacts, they should come on our calls. I will call David Hogg. We want them working on election protection. And we also, since you raised unions, my buddy Dave Saltman's on the call. He has raised the possibility or the question of should we talk about a general strike? I mean, the longer that this lunatic threatens the world in the White House, the more dangerous we are. We had a global march on his birthday with 5 million people for the No Kings March, but maybe we need to start thinking about a general strike, which the unions, of course, would certainly be front and center. Diane, do you want to add anything in? You want to put in some contacts? Be sure to be in touch with Ray and Andrea directly.
I don't have a lot of key contacts myself, but my husband still has a lot of labor union contacts. His name is Joseph Horgan, and he was one of the organizers of the Teamsters Union staff. So he's a labor organizer.
Well, let's bring him on. Why don't you come on with us next week? Let's talk more specifically about unions and the possibility of a general strike as a tool. I mean, the 5 million people who came out for the No Kings March was the largest turnout of a single coordinated demonstration in American history. And so we need to up the ante. It led directly to the President of the United States getting us in a war. I got to tell you, I can't resist as a historian. There was a guy who really formed the German Republic in the 1880s. His name was Otto von Bismarck, and he was quite a genius. He was a Prussian aristocrat. And as he was pulling together Germany, every time that he had a domestic crisis that he couldn't deal with, he attacked another country. And he always attacked countries that he could beat the hell out of in a few days and then come back. So he was having a problem. He attacked Denmark, kicked the hell out of him, came home. He was having another problem. He attacked Austria, kicked the hell out of him, came home. And then he had another problem, and he went down and took over Paris, for God's sakes, in the Franco-Prussian War, and then came home. And the problem Trump has is that he's so stupid. Otto von Bismarck was orders of magnitude smarter than Trump, but Trump was not smart enough to attack a country that he could just come home. That's not going to happen. So anyway, I don't know if we should blame the No Kings March for the war in Iran, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Go ahead, Bob Babcock, and then anything further for Andrea and Ray. Anybody else? We've got 120-something people, 28. Bob Babcock, and now Alex Williams, and Andrea and Ray will let you go. But we're so honored to have you with us. And Andrea, we want to see more of your major plan here. And Ray, we certainly want to keep track of what's going on in Georgia and with the rest of your work. Bob Babcock, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. A couple of things. One is I find a lot of good information, especially on Tom Hartman's show.
Yes.
TV.
Tom is great.
Yes, I watch it religiously. Certainly more often than I go to church these.
Well, I listen to him, but not religiously. But go ahead.
The other thing is, I feel very strongly that we need to occupy the Democratic Party. We need to take over the Democratic Party. We need to become precinct committee people. As precinct committee people, we have access to the database, Vote Builder, in our precincts and around the community. And we can reach directly to people. We know how to reach directly to people when we do that. But, you know, certainly I don't think we're going to be able to occupy the Republican Party turn around. And unfortunately, the Green Party, while I love their platform, they have difficulties getting elected. But Democrats are getting elected, and I've actually seen it successful in DuPage County in Illinois. In 2006, we sat around my friend Bob Pikert's standing room table. We said, what the hell needs to happen for Democrats to get elected in DuPage County? And I remember the friend saying that they made great strides in Kane County when they started becoming PCs, precinct committee people. So we actively recruited precinct committee people in DuPage County. We took over the party. We kicked out the chair. Bob Pikert became the chair. And for the first time in decades, Democrats started getting elected in DuPage County. What we want to do is recruit good candidates and train them well so that they can get elected. But we need to come together. And I think, you know, as progressive Dems, Democratic Socialists I am, that's what we need to do to be successful. Because if we're not successful, if this group here is not successful, forget about it. Forget about our country.
Right. Well, I think the first thing in terms of getting Democrats elected, and we are nonpartisan here, by the way, but to get Democrats elected, you have to have Democrats worth electing. And, you know, David Hogg was in there he was going to primary incumbent Democrats, and they just about lynched the guy. So, you know, but there was a major, and we'll have to have this on, there was a major takeover in Arizona. The Democratic Party in Arizona was turned around. I don't know the specifics, Ray or Andrea, maybe you know, but there was something happened with the Arizona Democratic Party that was really very progressive. Do either one of you know, or anybody else?
Well, let me stop for a second. Have you seen the polls on AOC?
No.
She is right up there with Barack and Michelle Obama as the most popular Democrats in the country.
Well, there you go.
Thanks for that, Bob. Sluggo, I am familiar with the doings in Arizona.
Okay, give us a quick rundown, if you will.
Well, there, the progressives used to be few in number and far between, and they've learned to work together across different silos and all that. And they banded together and swept the statewide Democratic Party officerships. And as far as I know, they're doing a really good job holding on to it. That's often a lot harder said than done. In Nevada, progressives had taken over the Democratic Party there, but then the vestiges of the old Harry Reid machine struck back and swept them all back out of power. So it's one thing to get in there, it's another thing to hold on.
Yes, we had the chair of the Democratic Party of Nevada on with us, and then she was gone. So, you know, well, so we need to follow this. We'll talk about Arizona in greater detail next week, Mike, if you can get somebody on from there, or we'll go to John Brakey. That's great. Andrea and Ray, I assume. Well, what can you tell us about the state of the Democratic Party in Georgia and Virginia?
I can do Virginia. I put it in the chat. Virginia elections are won by the grassroots. The Democratic Party exists here in Northern Virginia. The party committees have some size. I live in a county of 26,000 voters. Our Democratic committee has 12 people on it. I am 71 years old and I'm the kid. So what you find in Virginia is you find a lot of county committees with ancient people holding on to their power, and they don't want any new people to come in because then they would lose their powers. So what the grassroots did in Virginia is we united. So Center for Common Ground, we normally are responsible for the Black vote. National Women's Political Caucus and our partners at Network Nova, we are responsible for turning out the women vote. There is Rural Ground Game. They are responsible for turning out the rural vote. And then there is the Virginia Grassroots. And again, we are all members of each other's organization. We each have a specialty. We stay in our lane, but we work together so we understand what we might need to shore up in another organization. And that is why we win in Virginia.
Well, good for you. Ray McClendon, what's the Democratic Party like in Georgia?
Yeah, the Democratic Party as an apparatus has been ineffective as a party, has not raised any money, has not been a technical platform or an engagement platform for turning out voters for election. It's similar to, our structure has been similar to what was just described by Andrea, in that we have community engagement organizations that have done this work on their own, that have come together and collaborated to turn out the vote in the various constituent communities. It's not in any way, shape, or form based upon any overall energy provided by the Democratic Party. To that effect, there was a public spat between Ossoff and Nikema Williams because Ossoff, of course, is concerned about the viability of the state party going into 2026 for his election. And she has subsequently, after a lot of gnashing of teeth over the last several months, she finally stepped down. And we have now a new chair that will be in place. And we think things are going to be better. But the reality is, going back to Bob's comment earlier, we've got to take over progressive ideas and community-based ideas from a grassroots level by identifying people to run for office from the local level and building up concerted response on the local level in local school boards, city councils, county commissions, etc., and building a deep bench from that level. That's the way MAGA took control of the Republican Party. It was done, although Trump gets a lot of the credit. When you look at what happened in Georgia, it was because of the takeover of local election boards, school boards, etc. And that has given them the grassroots strength that they needed to turn Georgia from what would have been blue in 2020 to red in 2020.
Wow. We have 130 people with us, and that's all familiar to us. Ray, it's pretty amazing to hear it, and we're going to have to talk about what can be done to build the grassroots apparatus, especially now that all these MAGA stars like Marjorie Greene and Tucker Carlson are turning into peace activists. Maybe we can recruit them for the progressive grassroots. I doubt it, but anyway. But this is important information, and it's good to see what's happening in Virginia. And clearly, we've got our work cut out for us in Georgia. Maybe we can actually get to Ossoff and turn him into a grassroots organizer. That would be helpful. I would assume.
We're working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Alex Williams, Nick Crane, Lee Stanfeld, and we're going to kind of ease our way over to Iran to talk about the latest war. Alex, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was wondering about what was going to happen with the war. I see there's already starting an anti-war movement, which is cool, really cool. And
well, I wanted to have a giant national march this coming weekend, but everybody told me it's impossible to organize that quick. So, but I remember the Vietnam War. We came out really quick, but we were a lot younger. A lot of us were a lot younger then. But here we are again, man. Why can't we march on the Pentagon on Sunday?
Well, I I remember that I was a little kid then, really little, but I remember they would have marches like throughout the year. I mean, it was a anti-war like big gathering, like every quarter or something in 69
Oh, yeah,
or 70, somewhere around it. But anyway, I think now I like this. I mentioned the strike idea before that you were talking about earlier about
right.
the unions, and that's I think we're coming to that. And I also think we might be coming to the place where the country's got to split unless we can take over enough in the next election. Because if we can take over enough in the next election, then it won't matter, you know. But
Well, I got to tell you, living in Los Angeles, I would love to see California become a country. You know, enough of this crazy stuff. We can unite with Oregon, Washington. There was a book about it called Ecotopia. We can take Hawaii. You guys can have Alaska. But what kind of split? I don't know. But you raise an interesting point about we've had the global no. We've had the global No Kings March. Maybe the next big one needs to be a general strike. What do you think, Alex?
yeah, because like as far as the anti-war stuff, the perfect day for that would be the 4th of July, which is coming up. We got enough time.
People, apparently there is stuff called for the 4th of July, but the problem is it's already a holiday. People are going to come out anyway. How do we know who are the peace marchers versus the regular July 4thers? July 4th, I believe, is on a Friday this year. And we will not meet the following Monday. But, if we're going to do another global thing, I mean, No Kings was incredibly successful. How about no commerce or no work?
And I got one question, and it kind of goes to Andrea a little bit too, and the gentleman from Georgia. I got cousins that live in Richmond, and it always bugs me about how in the South you have all these people, black people, and yet all these states are like redder than red. I mean, like, how come we don't try to get out to vote in like Mississippi and Texas or something? I mean, that just every election cycle, it seems like, and then it just falls short or not.
Well, I can answer that question very
go ahead,
easily.
Andrea.
Number one, there is no one putting any money behind our efforts to turn out the black votes. Number one, the Virginia voter file is $20,000 a year. The Georgia voter file is $30,000 a year. I pay for those Center for Common Ground on our own. Fundraising this year for Virginia has been horrible. So number one, no one puts any money behind our efforts. Number two, we do a ton of work in Virginia. Virginia has won all of our races, and Virginia is not red by the stretch of anyone's imagination. Mississippi, we don't have a lot of strong organizations on the ground. As I said, in Virginia, all of the grassroots groups came together. We are all members of each other's groups, and we all work together. In many of the other states, the individual grassroots groups, they are at each other's throat, and they are all fighting over money. So that is a very important thing to figure out and resolve. We wanted to come into North Carolina in 2022. All the grassroots groups fighting over money. They told me to get out. Other groups invited us back in 24, and we came back. We run into this same problem in so many other states. The grassroots groups are not together. They are a mean girl, mean boys. Well, we're the groups here, and any resources we should get. But you don't have a voter file. You don't know what you're doing. You do realize that we won a new congressional seat in Alabama, and that was because our people in Alabama worked and played very nicely with all the other grassroots groups in Alabama, and we won a second black congressional district in Alabama.
Well, Ray McClendon,
let me just add to that. Let me add to that the voter suppression is real and it is systemic, as I tried to mention, and I didn't go into dwell on it. But this is a sustained process that's gone on for decades in the South. The very way that elections have been structured has been structured to dilute Black votes, to preclude Blacks from voting, and to make it much more difficult for those who want to vote. They tweak the laws each and every year to make it more difficult by closing precinct locations in Black communities, by providing misinformation on polling locations, by running out of supplies. I mean, it's a constant process by shortening the time frames for early voting. All of those activities are a concerted effort. In Georgia, as an example, that when they shorten decrease the number of polling locations, which increased the number of people standing in lines, we still went out and provided food and water to people that were standing online during heat waves. The legislature the very next year came back and made it illegal to pass out food and water to people standing in line. They want to discourage people voting, Black people voting. That's the bottom line. So it's a very systematic, intentional, across the board, comprehensive effort. So when you look at places in the South, like Mississippi and other places, and they have done this through voter suppression. And then the final piece is they can sustain this because of gerrymandering. They have gerrymandered districts so that they have control of the governor's office and both houses of the legislature.
Right. And I think what's coming now, I think in 26, is a massive assault on the ability of married women to vote. Because, on the heels of this MAGA attack on immigrants, they're going to be challenging the married names of women that don't match their birth certificate. And they're going to not allow women to vote who have a married name that is not the same one on there unless they have a marriage license.
No,
and
unless
so
you
you're
have
going
a
to
passport, Harvey. It's a passport. Marriage license is $30. The passport is $130. You have to have a passport, that official bridge document.
Right, but we had an instance. My wife's name on her passport does not match her name on her birth certificate, and so she had to get a driver's license. They made her get a marriage certificate, and it was ridiculous. And that's going to be happening in 26. They're going to try and reverse the 19th Amendment by challenging the ability of married women or women whose name does not match their birth certificate.
So when you're an essential worker, you're working at a grocery store or a janitor in a hospital, and you've got specific hours, and your hours don't match up with the time that early voting is available, and you don't have off on election day. If you can't get in and out of an election polling location in 15 or 20 minutes, or you don't know where your polling location is because they have obfuscated that, then you just say, it doesn't make any difference. Why vote? Right. It's more important for me to get to work. So all of these things are coming up again, are the reasons that voter turnout is low. Now it's our job to try to overcome that. But back to Andrea's original point, we don't have the resources, and the Democratic Party refuses to invest in progressive groups that know the local community and can touch these voters. That's what we've been crying about and bemoaning for the last 8 years.
And I will point out in Ohio 2004, the Secretary of State published a website that had wrong addresses for precincts. If you went to if you knew your precinct and you went to vote using the address on the Secretary of State's website, there could have been a hardware store or a vacant lot. I mean, that's the level that it was at, and will be again in 26, no doubt about it.
Won't be a
Nick Crane,
problem in Virginia. We verify every phone number and every voter location. Won't be a
right? Well,
problem here.
you do not have Ken Blackwell as your Secretary of State, so there you go. But thank you, Andrew. Ray, let's keep going. Nick Crane and Lee Stanfeld, and then Mike. Nick Crane, go ahead. And thank you, Andrea and Ray, for sticking with us here. This has been really fascinating and supremely important. I'm trying to. There we go. Oh, can't get Nick Crane unmuted.
Let him go now.
Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Okay. So I just want to say I agree with everything Ray is saying. I've done videography and photography work for Daniel Blackman and the ACLU on their Black Voters Matter tour. I'm really trying on this, on the War Powers resolution, I'm trying to draw a line in the sand with Warnock, because I'm really afraid that we're not showing enough courage to draw a line in the sand and say, like, if you keep messing up, you could be subject to a shame primary, because this comes after the John Lewis Voting Rights Act not passing, that terrible ICE bill that they passed. I forgot the name of it. The Crypto Genius Act, where we know through leaked text that they.
Nick, are you still with us? Nick keeps going in and out here.
Yeah.
Ray, is there any hint from Warnock's side that he would not support the War Powers Act?
I have not heard.
Okay. Nick, we've lost you here. Let's go to Lee Stanfeld, and then Mike, we'll come back to you. Go ahead, Lee.
Okay. Yeah, the problem with the Democratic Party is that no matter how many states we take over, or how many candidates it is always useless in the end, because when the senators campaign took the party to court, when Senator Sanders' campaign took the party to court back in, I think it was like 2017, 2016, something. Anyway, they had been sabotaging Sanders' campaign and rigging the primaries, and they didn't even deny that. In court, they didn't deny it. However, the court found that the Democratic Party is owned by the leadership, and there is no law to force them to follow their own party rules, because it's not a publicly owned entity. It's privately owned. So there's no law that can enforce them to not, when they don't follow their own policies. So they can choose whomever they want to endorse or choose in any presidential or congressional elections. And there's no way to reform the Democratic Party from inside out because of this. Ironically, it's the least Democratic Party in the country. And the reason that the Green Party has not made more progress is because the Democratic Party's corporate-owned leadership recognizes the Green Party as their biggest enemy. And they've gone to incredible lengths to sabotage it at every level. They've sued the Green Party and done behind-the-scenes sabotaging of Green candidates' campaigns on both local and national basis. Here in Arizona, they've even managed to get the Clean Elections program to hold off on sending only to the Green Party candidates. Everybody else got the forms way ahead of time, but the Green Party candidates, they didn't send them the forms that they had to fill out to get their bios and their statements into the statewide voter pamphlet until it was too late for the candidates to possibly fill it out and return it in time to meet the deadline.
Right. I want to point out that in 2016, Jill Stein, who's a good buddy of mine, went into Michigan to sue to get a recount of the vote that obviously was stolen by Donald Trump in Michigan in 2016, and she got a court order from the judge saying there needed to be a recount in Michigan, which would have been hugely impactful. But he ruled that Hillary Clinton had to sign on because the law said you had to be a likely winner, and she was the likely winner. So Jill Stein won a court order to get a recount in Michigan in 2016 if Hillary Clinton would sign on, and Hillary Clinton refused to sign on to a recount in Michigan and then turn around and attacked Jill Stein. I mean, give me a break. So yes, I mean, so much for that. Thank you so much for that on the Democratic Party. We have our hands full for God's sakes, with the Democratic Party, as we all know. Mike Hersh and Maggie Boyd, and then
Yeah,
we still have 124 people with us. Let's keep rocking and rolling here.
Maggie, why don't you go first and then I'll come after you.
Okay, I just wanted to point out the fact. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I wanted to point out the fact. I mean, people are talking general strikes. There's a group called General Strike United US, and GSUS is their.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's online,
Well, let's
and
have
they will
one.
tell you they have packets out and everything. But what the thing they do emphasize is that you got to have 3.5% of the population to be successful in your general strike, and we don't have that. That would be about 11 million people.
Oh, I think we're close. We can't, obviously, we can't do it on July 4th. That's a holiday anyway. But I think we could get 11 million people. Maggie, what do you think?
I personally don't. I don't think we're near that because at the No Kings thing, it was between 5 and 6 million. Some people are saying 12. I don't believe that. That's an inflated number. That's crap. I mean, that's my opinion. But I think we have to be damn sure, and we have to organize in all 50 states if we're going to do something like this. And we got to make sure we have unions and white collar and blue collars. We got to have corporations and businesses. You just can't
Right.
decide you're gonna have a strike and okay, we'll have a strike. Can't do that. That's not a good
Well, let's
thing. The
talk
other
about
thing I
that.
wanted to mention too is David Hogg. I really think that we should have him on, and I really hope he does come because I think he's the future of the Democratic Party. I think that the only people that are going to bitch about him replacing people are the people who don't do their damn jobs anyway. So I'd say get the dead wood out and let's do something. I'm
I
tired of
see.
these incumbents. They think oh, I own the seat now. I'm there. Nah, that's crap. Look at Chuck Schumer. I rest my case.
Well, we have had David Hogg on. He was talking, of course, about gun control. But I definitely want to have him back. There's no doubt about it. But listen, I got to tell you, we're seeing a major split in the MAGA movement. Who knows if this war goes on, how many MAGA people would jump ship and come join a general strike? I mean, you're talking about. Did you see the message from the Proud Boys? They might see it. Completely obscene. I can't repeat on the air here what the Proud Boys said to Donald Trump. So who knows where this is going to go? But I think we could get 11 million people on a general strike, and it can't be on July 4th, obviously. But we got to pick a day, and I think it could happen. I definitely think we definitely had 5 million people for the No Kings Day. I mean, we had 400 people in Teaneck, New Jersey, for God's sake, for 3 hours.
Sluggo, what we've got to understand is that we did not get into this position overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. We're not going to come up with a strong grassroots progressive solution this summer. It's going to take the roll-up sleeves, hard work to work this year and next year. That's why we're starting on the ground now. And I think it's got to be a movement from the ground up. That's why these grassroots organizations are so important. I encourage everyone to get involved with grassroots organizations, whatever they might be. We put too much importance on who the leaders are nationally. But we know, as Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. And we need to be active locally. That's where we have lost the fight, because we have lost the fights in local school boards, local election boards, city and county commissions, and so forth across this country in the battleground states, particularly over the last 5 years. And based upon not investing in those folks, again, going back to what somebody said earlier, by not training up candidates and holding those candidates accountable at those lower levels, and then graduating them up almost like a minor league system, so that you're getting qualified people with character and integrity. We've got to start building that kind of base in order to fight, or we're going to just continue to put Band-Aids on these problems and be in the same position again in 26 and 28.
Well, I 100% agree with you. I'm sure most people on the call do. We're joined by the great Kevin Camps, by the way, who's driving from D.C. up to Kalamazoo. We're going to talk about the nuclear issue in a minute, and especially the transition to renewables, which is such a big part of everything we're doing. But Ray and Andrew, you guys have pioneered the world of grassroots organization, and we did have the age issue raised here. I mean, we do have to have younger people coming out. There's no doubt about it. I'm just curious, having been through the Vietnam War, I'm just wondering what this is going to do. This attack on Iran, which we're going to talk about as we go forward. Trump did manage to change the topic of discussion from Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid to the three places he hit in Iran, which I don't know how that plays out. We assume he knew what he was doing. This is as I say, I don't think that the real cause of Trump's attack on Iran is not nuclear weapons in Iran. It's the No King's Day. I mean, he was dropping the bombs on the 5 million people that came out, and the 5 million that did not show up at his birthday party in D.C., where he fell asleep and where his wife wouldn't hold his hand. But that's a whole other story here. We still have got 117 people with us. Mike Hersh, then Murtaza, then Nick may be back. And then we've got Kevin Camps with us. We want to jump into the energy issue because a lot has happened. And we certainly segued from the Vogtle reactors in Georgia, which are, by the way, the last large atomic reactors built in the United States. There are 0 large atomic reactors under construction in the U.S. now, and I don't think there'll ever be another one myself. But especially given the drop in price in renewables, that's something we're going to segue to. Go ahead, Mike Hersh, then Murtaza, and Nick. And Ray, thank you for sticking with us as long as you have. And Andrea, when we continue, please to jump in if you will. Go ahead, Mike Hersh.
Slugger, I want to clarify a bunch of things that I've seen in the chat, and some of our really super intelligent and thoughtful people have spoken, but they might have missed out on some of what we're trying to do here. Number one is this is a nonpartisan Zoom. We do not tell people to support any political party or candidate. Our guests are free to discuss any issues that they want. And our attendees are also welcome to present things. My advice to everyone is don't dump on people trying to reform any party or organization of any kind. It takes a lot of hard work to clean up these messes. And the last thing we need is people telling us it's never going to work. Don't do that. It can't happen. And also don't tell people who are trying to start third, fourth, fifth parties that what they're doing is useless. If that's where their heart and soul takes them, then let them do what they want to do. Let's not be involved in stepping on each other and getting in each other's way. There's a lot of different ways of doing this. Ray said it very, very well. We didn't get into this mess in a day. We're not going to clean it up in a day. And I'm going to add to that. We didn't get into this mess by one way or 2 ways or 10 ways. We got into this mess through countless ways. And it's going to take countless different cleanup efforts to get us back out of it. And we're not going to get anything done if we spend our time trying to lecture each other and put each other down and tell each other your thing isn't going to work. In terms of whether or not we can have a general strike, of course we can. Of course we can. In France, they have general strikes if the price of baguettes goes up a nickel. Well, they don't use nickels, but you know what I mean. We can do that. We can do that. The question is, will it be easy? I think it's going to get easier and easier the tougher and tougher things get for the average person. And I've been trying to push this idea. So far, I've got 1.5 people supporting it, but I'm hoping that we can keep rocking and rolling. I think that we should train ourselves to stop spending money on luxuries for a couple of reasons. One, the oligarchs that depend on fleecing us for fast fashion or plastic junk that we don't need, all different kinds of things, all the way up to fancier cars than we need. If we restrain our spending, we can choke off a lot of the support from the people who support Trump. And once they see that we aren't supporting them with our dollars, they're going to freak out and tell Trump to knock it off. Now, whether he listens to them or not, I have to believe that at some point he will, because he's one of them. You know, if people stop buying his Melania coin and Trump coin and all these other stuff, if people back away from all these things that he's trying to do, and we hit him in the pocketbook where it really counts, it'll wipe that grin off of their face. And that'll do a couple of other things. It'll give us more money in our pockets where we can support good grassroots candidates and organizations to help them win. We can help buy back our government from the oligarchs, number one. And number two, it'll give us some training where we can get used to doing without things we don't need. And that will allow us to build power and organization to have a general strike. And just to give a last note of optimism, a lot of the major unions have set their contracts to all expire next year on May Day to facilitate a general strike just by refusing to renew their contracts. So believe me, these are a lot of great ideas. We've got a lot of brilliant people here, but other people have already thought of a lot of these things. And I predict that there will be a general strike on May Day next year.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, as my mother used to say. And in terms of our bipartisan and nonpartisanship, Ray, you're in Georgia. I know you're tight with Marjorie Taylor Greene. We would glad to welcome her on at any time. If anybody knows Steve Bannon or Alex Jones or Tucker Carlson, you know, these people are all kind of spearheading the new peace movement. We'll be glad to have any one of these people on. You know, I'll take Bobby Kennedy you know, invite your favorite Republicans, your favorite MAGA, please. I want the Proud Boys on, although they gotta watch their language. We can't have the Proud Boys saying what they just. I can't believe what they just said to Donald Trump. You know, the three letters are FTS. If you can figure that out. I mean, come on, guys. We want you on here. Let's get these Republicans on our calls, for God's sakes. I would love to have Steve Bannon on. He's a really interesting guy, and we need to talk about Opus Dei with Steve Bannon. So, and yes, our door is wide. I've been on a lot of right-wing shows, by the way, over the years, and because
Sluggo, real quick. Somebody asked in the chat who is the in charge of Georgia Democrats. Once when Nikema Williams stepped down, they elected Charlie Bailey as the chairman of the Georgia State Democrats. He's a former Fulton County attorney, district attorney, and ran for attorney general in 2018 and lieutenant governor in the election. So,
well, listen. We need to have them on. We can have them on. We can have on the Republicans too. I mean, I'm sure that Greg Powers would love to have a talk with Governor Kemp. He's already had, by the way, Governor Kemp almost punched him out. We've seen the footage of that. We have two great nuclear people, and I want to make the segue, Carl Grossman and Kevin Camps, to Vochtel, because Vochtel is a huge issue, obviously, in Georgia. We've been talking about the race for the Public Service Commission. Ray, Carl and Kevin, if you can unmute, what can you tell us? We just saw that Trump, for the first time in American history, a president removed a member of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This is unheard of. Kevin and Carl, what can you tell us, first of all, about the importance of the PSC race in Georgia in terms of Vochtel? And then let's jump into the other nuclear stuff that's really got it. Murtaza, Nick Crane, Lee will come back to you all, and then Donald Smith. But let's hear from Kevin and Carl about this Vochtel situation and the NRC.
Why don't you go first, Kevin?
Okay, Carl. Thank you. Well, I was honored and privileged just now to attend Nuclear Accountability DC Days. It's an annual event for the past 37 years. And some of the authors of a brand new report about Vogel Units 3 and 4, Nuclear Watch South, Glen Carroll, and
you're
Georgia Women's Action Direction.
Kevin, you seem to be breaking up.
Well, I can try to call back in on the cell phone.
If you want, call in without your video.
I can call back in on my cell phone.
Yeah, please. We know how handsome you are, That's been recorded. So come back without the video. It might be
Okay,
better.
can you
There
hear
we
me
go.
better?
Yeah, that's better. Go ahead now.
Can you hear me any better?
Yes, we can. Go
Okay,
ahead.
apologies. Yep. So Georgia Wand and Watch South put out a new report about Vogtle 3 and 4. Very shocking. I mean, the final price tag for those two reactors is approaching $40 billion, $20 billion each. What's incredible about that is the owners like Southern Nuclear, Georgia Power, back in 2012, when they broke ground, they had the green light from the NRC. They predicted price tags of 7.5 billion each. So 15 billion. It's actually 40 billion for the two, 20 billion each, and still rising. And if you compare it to the Cheney Energy Task Force report of May of 2001, the prediction by the Nuclear Energy Institute back then was $2.5 billion each for new reactors, $5 billion for repair. So you see, they lowball it, and the truth comes out eventually.
What other technology in American history has the price risen by a factor of 20?
Nuclear weapons.
Oh, okay.
I would point out that what's really shocking about the energy justice aspects of this is that hundreds of thousands of Georgia ratepayers, many of whom are African American, all of whom I'm talking about are low income, have been cut off from their electricity because they can't afford it, because they're being charged on their electric bill for these exorbitant Vogtle 3 and 4 price tags. So it's approaching 10% of the service area ratepayers have been cut off from electricity. So this is a major energy justice issue. It's a major environmental justice issue. It's the best news the nuclear power industry has for the United States in the past several decades.
Well, it's mind-boggling. And of course, we have this big nuclear renaissance push, which is the last gasp of the nuclear power industry. Carl or Kevin, can you offhand, the Vogtle reactors are 2 gigawatts, right? A little over 2,000 megawatts for the two reactors. How much would it have cost them to provide 2 gigawatts of power capacity to Georgia if they'd gone solar? Do we know?
Oh, you probably know better than I do, Harvey. They're 1,100 megawatts electric each, so that's 2,200 megawatts for this $40 billion price tag. So the others who know the price of solar, wind, can do the comparison.
Well, let's do that.
And they came in 7 years later.
Let's do that going forward. Georgia is completely screwed now economically. Georgia will never recover from the building of these two reactors. And as I say, they are the last two reactors in the United States, even though under construction, even though we're starting to hear all this crazy stuff about small reactors, which cost even more money per kilowatt hour or per megawatt than the big ones. Ron Leonard estimates that if Georgia had tried to build 2,200 megawatts of nuclear of solar, it would have been 1/20th the cost. Is that right, Ron Leonard? $2 billion. Is that what you're saying? Well, whenever you pipe in. Now, the other issue we want to deal with, and then we're going to go to Iran here, is the unprecedented firing. Carl Grossman, maybe you can take this one. For the first time in American history, a president has fired a commissioner on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Is that correct, Carl?
Yeah, it is. But let Kevin handle this too, because he covers the Hill for the organization Beyond Nuclear, and he can explain what happened.
Okay, Kevin.
Well, I think, just speculating. Yep, I'm just speculating, but I think that the reason Trump fired Christopher Hansen from the NRC Commission was because he was Biden's appointee to be chairman. Before that, he was Trump's appointee to be on the commission.
Oh my God!
I think it was the Biden connection. But what's ironic is Hansen is from South Haven, Michigan, the hometown, the company town of the atomic reactor. He's very pro-Palisades. So that's not really saying much, though, because the other 4 remaining commissioners are going to vote against us on Palisades and else, too. And what's coming up quick is July 1st, Chairman Wright, Trump's new chairman, is term limited unless the Senate reconfirms his appointments. So it could go down to 3 commissioners real quick here within days. But the industry loves to commission, and 3 commissioners just fine. Although I should add that a bunch of pro-nuclear voices are very concerned about the Breakthrough Institute. They pointed out that a full commission of 5 commissioners is twice as productive as reduced commission of 3 commissioners. So the Breakthrough Institute kind of objected to Trump's firing of Hansen because they want more reactors and nuclear to be rubber stamped as soon as possible.
It's insane. It's completely insane.
Slugger, real quick, we're getting a lot of people in the Zoom who wonder what this has to do with Iran. And
we're gonna jump there real quick because we're going to get back into Iran very quickly. I did want Carl Grossman to point out very quickly that the Democratic governor of New York has now gone full bore pro-nuclear, and then we'll get right into Iran. So go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, it'll take just a few minutes. This is an 8-page press release issued today by New York Governor Kathy Hochul, a Democrat. Starts, Governor Hochul today directed the New York Power Authority to develop and construct a zero-emission advanced nuclear power plant in upstate New York. Now, this so-called nuclear renaissance is predicated on the false claim that nuclear power is carbon-free. The nuclear fuel cycle, mining, milling, enrichment, is heavily carbon-intensive. But Kathy Hochul and others in the Democratic Party, in fact, all this that's happening now, this new push for nuclear power, is preceded by the ADVANCE Act. And this was in Congress last year. In the Senate, it was passed by, it was 133-2. ADVANCE means we're for advanced nuclear power plants. We're going to build them and promote them and so forth. The only 2 voting against the ADVANCE Act in the Senate was Ed Markey of Massachusetts and Bernie Sanders of Vermont.
Good for them.
Let me just read quickly. The Wall Street Journal put out its story. It'll be in the paper tomorrow. It's out already. Talks about the emissions-free baseload power of nuclear energy. And it goes on, the Wall Street Journal piece talks about Microsoft's plan to restart the undamaged reactor at Pennsylvania's 3 Mile Island power plant, suggests that concerns around nuclear safety have eased and confidence in the technology has improved since a partial meltdown in 1979. And just one other item, if I could, there's not enough people at all. I mean, again, Hochul has drunk the nuclear Kool-Aid, and so many other people in politics on both sides of the aisle have done the same thing. And it's not just about an hour ago, somebody was talking about the importance of unions, and they're sure important in our society. But look, in the 8-page release, New York State AFL-CIO President Mario Salento said, New York's clean energy future depends on reviving and expanding nuclear power. Without and again, somebody here's a person in the labor union field also swallowing the Kool-Aid acid. And just let me end by, this is an organization which, and there's few these days, fighting nuclear power. And this is the time to do it because the costs of solar and wind, the availability of solar and wind power, I mean, that's 80% of new energy these days is solar and wind. It's here today, a clean, green energy source that we can live with. Anyway, let me just read just a couple of sentences.
Okay, and then we're going
Food and Water Watch. Governor Hochul's nuclear gamble is a reckless distraction from the clean, affordable energy New Yorkers actually need. Nuclear power is dirty, dangerous, and wildly expensive, and this project will leave New Yorkers footing the bill while delaying urgently needed progress on renewables. Hochul needs to stop chasing false solutions and start delivering real climate action. And just one more sentence. The governor has consistently dragged her feet on implementing New York's landmark 2019 climate law. Essentially, she, like California Governor Newsom, have done what they can to, to discourage the development of solar and wind. These clean, green alternatives are there waiting to be utilized, eliminating any need for this energy source, which is murderous, which is lethal, which is deadly.
Absolutely. And
Great
so let's
job.
take this now.
Great job.
Perfect, Carl. And there are studies, of course, that show that regular nuclear operations without major accidents do kill people. The work of Joe Mangano, we've had him on before, we'll do it again. But here's where we make the segue now. This is critical. This war in Iran, this craziness in the Middle East would not be happening if our planet was running on renewable energy. You know, the whole coal or King Kong, coal, oil, nukes, and gas, they're all of a piece. The nuclear power diversion they're pushing it as hard as they can to keep the world from going to renewable energy. And the reality in Iran is this. We have 94 commercial reactors operating in the United States, the last two of which we've just talked about at Vogtle, and Kevin is very well aware of this. We have almost 440 worldwide. Every single atomic reactor that is operating on the planet today could be turned into another Chernobyl or Fukushima, with millions of people dead, trillions of dollars in damage done. Thank you, Steve, for showing the piece I just put up on the website today. Every atomic reactor in the world is vulnerable to a single drone shot. It would take one drone hitting any commercial reactor, of which there are 440 in the world, to turn it into another apocalypse. And so this high-profile attack that Donald Trump has just waged on Iran's weapons facility is completely academic. It's completely beside the point. And I want to remind people, and we need to now flesh this out, and Kevin and Carl are great experts on this. It took less than 15 pounds of plutonium to do the atomic explosion that we all saw at Trinity at the end of the Oppenheimer movie, and 15 pounds, less than 15 pounds of plutonium to destroy Nagasaki. And, Iran, if they want to, God forbid, turn Israel into a radioactive wasteland, they can get the plutonium on eBay, for God's sakes. I mean, plutonium is all over the place, as Carl and Kevin know. There are tons of plutonium that are produced by nuclear power plants all over the world that Iran could get their hands on tonight. And, the plans for doing a nuclear bomb were published in the Progressive magazine in the 1980s. This is not rocket science to build a nuclear weapon. And, Trump is talking about having destroyed Iran's stockpiles. It's ridiculous. They don't know where Iran has stockpiled enriched uranium. It's about a little under 200 pounds. That was about 200 pounds, or a little under 300 pounds, actually, of enriched uranium that destroyed Hiroshima. Iran could get that, overnight. 15 pounds of plutonium anywhere on this planet is easily obtainable. And it would take one bomb, that to destroy, to turn Israel permanently into a radioactive wasteland. This attack on these alleged nuclear production facilities is completely beside the point. Has absolutely no impact on the long-term or even the short-term ability of Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And will make it even more to the point, Putin. As far as I'm concerned, there are three great monsters in the world: Trump, Putin, and Netanyahu. And Putin has basically offered Iran to hand them nuclear weapons. They don't need to build their own nuclear weapons. Putin will give them to you, and I'll tell you how. One way is that in the 1980s, when the Soviet Union fell, right, in 1990s, Ukraine inherited over 1,000 nuclear warheads from the former Soviet Union. Ukraine had 1,000 I think it was more like 1,500 nuclear warheads in their possession. And what did they do with them? They gave them to the Russians because the Russians said, if you will sign the nuclear proliferation treaty, and if you will give up your nuclear weapons that you inherited from the Soviet Union, we will guarantee your security going forward. Now, we know what that happened with Putin. But the bottom line is Putin got their 1,500 nuclear warheads. All he has to do to get Iran nuclear armed is to hand them, a dozen, 2 dozen of those warheads. There's no shortage of nuclear warheads on this earth. The attack on Iran's nuclear weapons facilities, which has excited so many Israelis. Oh, Trump is with us. Oh, Iran is not going to have nuclear weapons. It's absolutely ridiculous. Iran can have all the nuclear weapons they want like that because they clearly have more than 15 pounds of plutonium stored in Iran. That's all it would take to build a bomb to permanently irradiate Israel. I mean, this whole show of Trump. Well, Trump's niece has come out and said that the reason Trump attacked Iran was because of the taco nickname they gave him. Trump always chickens out.
So
They were talking about tariffs. But now, here he is. He's shown his manhood by attacking Iran. Marla, did you want to jump in?
Did you see the breaking news that Trump has announced that Iran and Israel have agreed upon a 12-hour ceasefire?
Well, what does that mean? 12 hours.
I know it's not much, but it's breaking news.
Oh, there you go. Mazel tov, as they would say in Israel. And what does a 12-hour ceasefire mean?
Not much, huh?
Right. And so, the bottom line is the idea that Trump's attack on Iran's nuclear weapons facility has any impact at all on Iran's ability to get nuclear weapons is nonsense, complete nonsense. Kevin or Carl, do you want to comment on that? There's another piece to it as well.
Well, I think people need to be educated. I mean, there's been such brainwashing. There's been such propaganda by the nuclear juggernaut for so many years. Years ago, it was energy too cheap to meter. Every few years, it's another slogan, as false as the last one. And these days is that nuclear power is emission-free. It's carbon-free. It's as I mentioned, very carbon intensive. And in terms of nuclear weapons and nuclear power, it's two sides of the same coin. They're enormously interlinked. And the real push, besides profits for GE and Westinghouse and so forth, has been, the original nuclear power plants were actually plutonium production facilities, dual use. And that it's an inextricable link. And not to sound too mortal in this afternoon or this evening, depending where you are, I really wonder about the survival of people and other life on this planet if this nuclear road, is continued on. I mean, the United Nations has designated 7 areas around the globe nuclear free. I think that this planet needs to be the entire planet. Needs to be nuclear free.
Carl, we need to expand those zones to correspond with the 7 continents.
Yeah, exactly. The 7 continents.
Now, I just want to point out we've got 4 people on stack, and
right.
also a lot of people are here because they're very concerned about the situation in Iran, the ongoing crisis of nuclear power in the United States, and the cowardice and capitulation of the politicians is something that we've had to live with for a while. I suggest we circle back to that again, but we really need to get to Iran now, because that's what a lot of people are here for. We don't want to do a bait and switch. We'll lose our audience. It's just not fair to people.
Go ahead, Murtaza. And then Kevin, there's one other dimension here, which is the question of the vulnerability of atomic reactors to attacks from places like Russia, where we already have had a drone attack on a commercial nuclear facility. Let's get Murtaza, Nick, Lee, Donald, and then we'll go to Kevin, if you can, Kevin, to talk about the vulnerability of atomic reactors to drone and other types of attack. Nick, go ahead. I'm trying to unmute you, Nick. We had technical problems.
Murtaza, go ahead. Murtaza's unmuted.
Oh,
Okay,
Murtaza,
so
where'd Murtaza go?
yeah, so I mean, I was referring. Well, I'll just say what I was going to state like 20, 30 minutes ago. Just wanted to agree with what I think Mike Hirsch said about, we need to use our money to and stop spending it on supporting the corporate businesses and support the local businesses and reduce our spending in total. But the reason I actually rose my hand was one, I I know that a lot of us are thinking, oh, look, the far right is opposing Trump, but this has happened before, right? Lindsey, how much Lindsey Graham hated Trump, and they're the best of friends. That we should not expect anything to come out of this. The far right are not our friends. We need to convince Republicans to join us. The second thing is the talk about money. I think it's important to note the DNC has 15 million cash on hand. The RNC has 72 million cash on hand. Yet Democratic donors just spent 25 million for Andrew Cuomo's mayoral race. At least 25 million. Probably far more than that, because those numbers are going to come in after the election. So there's money, but it's not being spent to drive the DNC, not being spent to grow the grassroots. It's being spent for candidates like Cuomo. And that brings me to the third thing, which I think Ray said. It's about the grassroots. We're not going to have money. We have to, it's all about building relationships and building the people power. We got to build up the grassroots, because there is no way we can compete unless we have millions of relationships across the country and can communicate and share the right people to vote for, the right policies to support through our people network. So that's just, not related to Iran, but just related to the conversation we were having earlier. That's what I wanted to note.
Well, Donald, it's interesting you raised the mayoral race in New York City. I just read today the polls are showing that the left candidate is ahead of Cuomo, and so what is the Democratic Party spending all this money in a primary? They just got rid of David Hogg for daring to suggest that they primary incumbent Democrats, and here the party is putting all this money behind the more conservative candidate for mayor of New York.
Well, Sluggo, let's be really, really clear. The party isn't spending money on Cuomo. It's Wall Street. He's in their pocket. He's their henchman. And they know that Mandami will make them pay their fair share in taxes and start taking care of ordinary people in New York City. And we'll know tomorrow how that all works out. And I also want to point out that they're voting with an instant runoff voting system. So there won't be spoilers in that primary where people, if your first choice drops out, then the person you pick as your second choice gets the vote in the next round. So it's very hard to translate the polls into whether somebody's going to win or not. It depends on who's not only a big first choice, but also is the second choice of a lot of people. So that's what we need to figure out.
Okay. It's all very, very interesting. Donald Smith, you haven't spoken yet, and then we'll go back to Nick if he's working, and to Lee. If you folks want to jump in now, we're open season. Talk about Iran and what's happening here. I have no idea what the impact of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran would be. Miley, you may want to comment on that. But Donald Smith, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So two quick points. Harvey, you said that I don't know if you were tongue in cheek, but you said you would invite Marjorie Taylor Greene or Steve Bannon to speak with you. And actually, I think that's a great idea. I tell if we can get these people, I think it's great to invite people you disagree with. Talk to them, because some of them are interesting. Even if you disagree with them, invite them. But I wanted to ask you, and you said, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene is apparently sort of anti-war, as are like Tucker Carlson is rather anti-war. But this weekly meeting on Monday afternoons, you don't cover foreign policy. Like you don't have progressive anti-war people here. I mean, I've never seen them. So I'm just somewhat surprised that you want to invite the right-wing anti-war people, but not. I haven't seen that.
I just want to say really, really quick. I haven't seen is not evidence. We've had David Swanson, who's a scholar of anti-war and peace. We've had, I think, Norman Solomon on. I think we've had Medea Benjamin on a few times. So, please don't use the things that you don't know about to say they didn't happen.
Well,
because
I'm
we're
saying
better than that.
I've never seen. I've been here. I've been attending this for a very long time. Okay, I said I never saw it. I didn't say it didn't happen.
Well, we also
Yeah,
had Dennis
but that's
Bernstein
the
on, and
implication, and it's sloppy thinking. So don't do it.
it's all
Is what
right.
I'm
Okay,
saying.
well, point is well taken. Of course, we had Daniel Ellsberg, the godfather of
Oh
all this.
wow, who's he? I mean,
Yeah, but no, this one in particular. Of course, none of you are as old as me to remember that during the Vietnam War we had some really surprising people who crossed over. Carl will remember, who were right wingers who became anti-war, and it was very important. It was a very big deal, and I've been shocked to see the ferocity of these Trump cult leaders, like Marjorie Greene and Tucker Carlson, the vehemence with that they're opposing this whole miasma. I'm curious. Bannon, I'd like to hear what he has to say. But yes, we certainly have Medea back and everybody else working on against this war. But you have to remember that the nuclear thing is the crux of this particular situation. And this attack on the nuclear facility in Iran is a complete illusion, because if you have 440 nuclear plants spread across the planet, there is nothing you can do to stop a nuclear war. I mean, these are pre-deployed weapons of nuclear mass destruction. So, Lee, but Donald, thank you for raising that, and we will have more anti-war people on as we go forward. Speaking of which, next week, by the way, thanks to Mike Hersh, we're going to have Congressman Jamie Raskin on with us, and that's a key vote, and we need to be talking about that in great detail. And like I say, in a few minutes, Kevin, if you can stick with us, I'd like you to describe the vulnerability of atomic reactors, because that is a key issue that none of these guys want to talk about. I have yet to see any reportage about the vulnerability of atomic reactors, even though we've already had a drone shot at Chernobyl. But let's proceed. Lee and then Nick, please. Lee, go ahead.
Okay. I just like to point out that despite the Democratic Party having a lot of war hawks in it, and of course all the Republicans are, the Green Party is genuinely anti-war, and it takes no corporate money. So when a candidate that's a Green candidate says they're anti-war, they mean it, and they're also anti-nuke. So I just would, I got cut off earlier, didn't get to make my point about the Green Party, and that is that people need to start treating the Green Party candidates and the party itself the same way they do the Democratic Party. People always get really fired up whenever progressives make any, even small headway in getting something progressive into a Democratic platform, while completely ignoring the Green Party platform, which is incredibly progressive. And when you get, and the Green Party accepts no corporate funding. So with the Green platform and candidates, what you see and hear is what you get.
Lee, this is nonpartisan. So
okay,
and believe me, I would say 90 to 95% of the people on this Zoom agree with you on that. So if you could just,
okay, that's fine.
Understand who you're talking to. We're not newbies here. We love you. We love what the Green Party stands for. And some of us wish Jill Stein had spoken up a little bit about nukes when she had the platform, and we're a little disappointed in that. But she's a wonderful person. She was a great candidate. We'd be much better off if she was in the White House as opposed to Trump. I think we all agree.
Well, I am still astonished that she worked so hard to get the recount in Michigan, and Hillary Clinton turned the court down, and then attacked her. I mean, that was just outrageous for me.
And that happens a lot. The Democratic Party sabotages the Green Party greatly, and that's why it's important the public understand that, because people say to me all the time, oh, well, they're not going to ever win anything. Well, that's because you keep listening to the lies about them instead of actually joining the party.
Well, Lee, I don't know if you realize this, but we've had Howie Hawkins on.
Oh yeah, Howie.
Dozens of times.
Good point. I can't get Nick Crane unmuted. I want to get Kevin Camps to explain to us as only he can.
Can you hear me?
I'm unmuted.
All right,
Go
very
ahead,
quickly,
Nick.
Nick, and then we're going to go to Kevin.
So, I would be totally I would totally love to see independent, and socialist and green parties running at the local level. I think that's something that would be good at the grassroots level. But specifically on Iran, I want to see if it would be worthwhile trying to get the head of the IAEA to testify in front of Congress. I saw his interview in Al Jazeera. And honestly, he came off as a pawn for Israel and Trump, but he's also saying that Iran was not close to a nuclear weapon.
Right.
As we're if that would have utility.
Well, another thing we need to deal with, and which is very interesting, as you say, Tulsi Gabbard, who I've met, by the way, said that Iran was nowhere near to having a nuclear weapon, wasn't even clear they wanted one. And Trump just completely trashed her. This is his own, intelligence chief in public. He just crapped all over Tulsi Gabbard. It was outrageous what he said about her. And then you make the good point that, what's his name, Rossi? We don't believe me. He is not our friend, Rossi, the head of the IAEA. Is very pro-nuclear, very no friend of renewables. That's for sure. And what he said here, we have to evaluate, but it's important that you raise the issue. I think it's important also, we need to deal in detail with the vulnerability of the commercial reactors to terrorism. And Kevin Camps and Carl Grossman really know a lot about that. And there's nowhere mentioned, I have seen nowhere mentioned in any of the media that nobody needs a nuclear weapon to send through the air, that we have 440 commercial reactors around the world, 94 in the U.S. Kevin Camps and then Carl, how vulnerable really are these
Sluggo,
atomic
we have David Grace, and then I think Donald Smith wants to offer himself as an expert on one of our Zooms. But David, if you want to unmute.
Go ahead, David, and you'll follow.
People in the chat are really frustrated with the lack of focus on the attack on Iran. So
I've
we should
been
really
waiting to speak about 20 minutes. So
go ahead, Kevin.
I'm
here
too.
Yeah. And then we'll go to David Grace. David,
it's interesting, Harvey, that you bring up the head of the IAEA. His hair is on fire and has been in Ukraine at Zaporizhia for years. His hair is on fire about Iran. As you said, the head of the IAEA is very pro-nuclear power. So when the nuclear establishment's hair's on fire, things are bad. And you mentioned Chernobyl. A single drone destroyed the radiological containment over Chernobyl in recent months. That was a single drone. So the next Chernobyl may be Chernobyl, to borrow a phrase from Adi Roach with the Irish Chernobyl Children's Project from 25 years ago, before they built that new containment that's now destroyed. Greenpeace has warned that restarting Zaporizhia in Ukraine is a really bad idea. Russia is threatening to restart Zaporizhia, 6 reactors, the largest nuclear plant in Europe, on the front lines of the war. And Russia wants to take what is already a very precarious situation, believe you me, with the reactors shut down mostly, and restart them at 100% power. So these are existential risks to the planet. And I put a book in the chat from the mid-1980s, Bennett Ramberg, warning that nuclear power plants domestically in any country are targets for the enemy. These are dirty bombs of massive scale that an enemy, a terrorist group, a subnational group, an enemy national government can blow up. And guess what? Like you've been saying about Israel, Harvey, your country is radioactively uninhabitable now. So, of course, Israel has the Dimona reactor. Iran has a research reactor that was given to them by the U.S. government under Atoms for Peace during the Shah's regime. As I'll just end with Helen Caldicott pointing out that if there had been nuclear power plants in Europe before World War II, Europe would be uninhabitable because World War II was total warfare. Everything was a fair target. And if nuclear power plants had been there, Europe would be uninhabitable. So there's a lot of reasons to get rid of nuclear power. This is a short list of them.
Well, very quickly, Kevin, how realistic is the idea that a single drone could turn a nuclear reactor into a Chernobyl or a Fukushima?
The safety risks alone, the companies themselves are risking Chernobyl-scale catastrophes at U.S. atomic reactors. So if somebody attacks it in any scenario with any form of weaponry, that just adds to the powder keg.
So Iran, if God forbid it wanted to, has 94 pre-deployed weapons of mass nuclear destruction on American territory. Is that correct?
Those are the operating reactors. You've got about 35 additional ones where the waste is still at, the high-level radioactive waste. Some of it's still in very vulnerable pools. The dry casks are not invulnerable. The pools, I'll just give an example. Ed Lyman, who's now with the Union of Concerned Scientists, did a study on the Indian Point nuclear power plant after the 9/11 attacks. He called it Chernobyl on the Hudson, ? And his figures were, whether it's the pools at Indian Point, the reactors themselves, thankfully it's all shut down now, and hopefully the waste is in dry casks. But his figures were 500,000 latent cancer fatalities if Indian Point were attacked. And the dollar figures and damages was in the trillions. And in fact, Al-Qaeda had considered attacking Indian Point on 9/11. So these are real world risks that we're living with in our communities.
Yes, absolutely. So this is not this very much a part of the discussion of Iran. Carl,
here's the book that Kevin is talking about, Nuclear Power Plants as Weapons for the Enemy. This was published 45 years ago by Bennett Ramberg. It was reissued just this year, 2025. And Ramberg writes how there's been little public consideration given to nuclear power plants in times of war. In fact, the subtitle after nuclear power plants as weapons for the enemy, an unrecognized military peril.
Right.
And so the lesson from this is that they should all be shut down for, among other reasons, they are and will be weapons for,
an enemy.
in quotes, an enemy during a time of war.
Right.
Okay,
so anybody
now,
discussing,
hold on, real quick.
Anybody discussing the Iran situation without dealing with the 440 commercial reactors around the world is missing a very critical piece of the Iran discussion. So, David Grace, I'm Mike. I know you're.
Well, we're missing a critical piece. Is what the hell do we do about it? We already know this is a disaster waiting to happen. We don't need to keep rehashing this as people are freaking out. We need answers and solutions, not more doom and gloom.
Go ahead, David Grace. David?
Well, thanks. I'm glad I followed Kevin because as he was discussing the target, if I remember right, in the construction of nuclear power plants, the concrete becomes brittle. And in the earliest designs, I'm from Missouri, and when they built Callaway, they were saying that the concrete would become too brittle to be safe after 20 years. And then during, I'm trying to remember if it was under Reagan or one of the Bushes, they gave it an extension and said 30 years would deal with the embrittlement. But now when we're looking at the cyber currency world, they need the additional electricity to develop their cyber currency. When you think about all of the massive Bitcoin.
David, we've all been over this over the past many weeks. Do you have any solutions for us?
Well, I'm just I call up radio talk shows all the time and lean on this issue that the AI and cyber currencies are almost an excuse to waste electricity, and that if we want to get into a world where normalcy reigns, we're going to have to get into a world where fake numbers are tossed aside and the reality sets in. And as you were just talking about military targets of nuclear power plants, I can remember 3 or 4 different summers where the coolant ponds, there was an Upper Illinois power plant, there was I think it was Augusta, Georgia, and there was a Florida plant where the coolant ponds became so hot that they had to shut down the plants. the summer heat created such heat in the coolant ponds. So for them to pretend that nuclear power is a safe option for climate change is actually walking us into a danger. And actually, I'm glad we've got a collection of people here. I remember just outside of Hong Kong, maybe a year and a half ago, they had a nuclear power plant that was being used for cyber currencies, and the plant was obviously in distress, and they couldn't shut down the plant because the cyber currency contractors wanted to use it too much. And
I'm going to jump in and stop you. We're now at 4 o'clock, and there are a lot of people waiting to talk about Iran and Israel. So can we pivot, Harvey? I've got an update on the.
Yeah, I'd just wrap up with that we can't deal with fake numbers for our solutions.
Thanks,
Okay,
David.
I'm going to go ahead, jump in with the latest news, and then
Right. So
Murtaza, Carl, I don't know if your hand is still up, and Donald, go ahead.
So about 45 minutes ago, there was news coming out that Trump had announced a 12-hour ceasefire, and he was saying that the conflict between Iran and Israel would now be called the 12-day war. But Reuters is reporting that CNN reported shortly before Trump made his post on Truth Social that Iran had not received any ceasefire proposals and saw no reason for citing a senior Iranian official. So, it's just, he's trying to distract us. And I say by he, I mean Trump. As you were saying earlier, Harvey, he's trying to distract us from the fact that he's on the brink of cutting off people's health care and shutting down rural hospitals and getting rid of Social Security, and nobody went to his parade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I, there was another astute person in the chat who said, remember what they did with Zelensky. But it's just, one of the first places I went to was the New York Times when I saw people talking in chat about the ceasefire, and the New York Times isn't even reporting on the ceasefire. So I think that it's just, yet another distraction from Trump. And if I can just say one more thing about
please.
Plutonium, yes, the waste isolation pilot plant in southern New Mexico was just supposed to be the first pilot plant to get rid of the nation's stockpile of plutonium contaminated nuclear weapons waste. And that was only designed to bury or dump a tiny fraction of the plutonium that has already been produced. There is so much of it. And, if Iran were really serious, I totally agree with you, Harvey. They could have dropped a nuclear bomb on Israel. I think that they are one of the responsible parties in this scenario. They have really been very restrained, in my opinion. They warned Qatar before they bombed the air base there. I think they're really intentionally trying to de-escalate the situation, and I think they've been acting rather responsibly. That's my 2 cents.
Well, that's an interesting point. I don't think Murtaza has spoken, then Donald, and then anybody else want to jump in? We got 15 minutes left. Go ahead, Murtaza. Are you unmuted? Let's unmute you, please. And Donald will unmute you again. And thank you for that, Myra. I know a lot of people wanted to discuss other aspects of the Iran situation, but of course, on this call, we have had a specific nuclear focus, and nobody has raised the issue of the vulnerability of nuclear power plants. I have not seen a single mention in any mainstream or even left media, except for my article at thefreepress.org or Carl's stuff about and Kevin's about the vulnerability, the fact we have 94 pre-deployed nuclear weapons of mass destruction right here in the U.S. And the Iranians could hit any one of them at any moment. It's terrifying. Donald Smith, go ahead.
Okay. There are one thing is there are several reasons that probably haven't been the reasons for Iran the reason for Trump bombing Iran, aside from wanting to help Israel, I mean, obviously, Iran is also an ally of China and Russia, and Iran has been providing drones and other weapons to Russia. So the neocons have been wanting to destroy Iran for a long time. And another something else that could really be true is that it's this. I wouldn't be surprised if it's true if the Mossad has videos of Trump on Jeffrey Epstein's island, and so they have him blackmailed to do whatever they want him to do.
Well, that's interesting. One of the women who was a captive of Jeffrey Epstein actually died within the past week, allegedly in a car accident. She was a principal. I think her name was Victoria Giuffre, something like that.
She
But
supposedly committed suicide, Harvey.
yes, but she was in a car accident beforehand, which supposedly brought it on. So listen, Mike, is there anyone else? Any other things that we want to talk about directly with Iran beyond this nuclear aspect to the issue?
Well, absolutely. And thank you, Sluggo. And I apologize to everyone who expected us to get to it more quickly. Sluggo is absolutely correct to point out how Trump targeting the nuclear facilities in Iran creates danger. We are trying to trace the spread, the possible spread of radioactivity from those sites. We're hoping that that is not the case, that it didn't cause a massive leak, like, but it risked Chernobyl, Fukushima, 3 Mile Island type incident. And none of those had to be attacked to break down and melt down. And, none of them were on earthquake fault lines like Diablo Canyon is. So, Sluggo, I'd like to compliment you for having Kevin on and Carl, who both of you guys are walking encyclopedias. All three of you are walking encyclopedias, and you're really screaming into the silence when it comes to this. And I do think that it's not economics. It's not about what's the cheapest way to produce power. It's the only way to create fissionable material to use to threaten to wipe out entire cities. This is just like, any part of the U.S. war machine. It's not about saving money, for God's sake. We know that they quadruple the cost of everything, charge $12,000 for a coffee machine and $15 for a hammer or whatever. The cost overruns are part of their business model, and it's not designed to save anybody any money. It's not even intended to give people efficient electricity. It's all about threatening other countries who get out of line, friends and enemies alike. So let's be really clear-eyed about this. We are risking catastrophe without terrorism, just through the embrittlement, the breakdowns of these reactors. And the fact that Trump would target them for military attacks without even consulting Congress, without even getting the fig leaf of war powers authorization or authorization for use of military force. This has very frightening ramifications for our Constitution moving forward, and it underscores the need for mobilized, organized, unified, national, and global resistance to what Trump is doing.
Well, so, and I think in summary, I think Trump's niece is probably on to something when she said, we know how crazy Trump is, that one of the reasons he did this was because of the taco nickname. Trump always chickens out. He was determined here not to chicken out. We had 5 million people marching for no kings. He had a failed march in Washington for his birthday where nobody showed up, and he fell asleep, and his wife wouldn't hold his hand. And we also have, the media has completely failed to point out, number one, that Iran does not need nuclear weapons production facilities. Nagasaki and the Trinity bomb both required less than 15 pounds of plutonium. I guarantee you that if Iran wanted 15 pounds of plutonium, they could get them by UPS or FedEx. And their weapons production facilities, many people, including Trump's own intelligence chief, for God's sake, said they weren't really pursuing a nuclear bomb, and they weren't close to a nuclear bomb. This is all, and we now, instead of 2.5 hours of discussing Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and all the constitutional garbage in his big bill, we were talking about Iran. And the question now becomes really, and this is a very important situation, what's going to happen with this bill that Trump has put forward, that was about to destroy our government, kill Social Security, kill Medicare, Medicaid. What is really going to happen with this? How serious is the a break in the MAGA movement, which we've considered a personality cult, but you have significant people in this cult, yelling at him. All this is going to spread out before us, but we had to make the point, and thank you for your forbearance, that nobody's talking about the vulnerability of atomic reactors. Nobody's talking about the reality of a nuclear weapon, which requires less than 15 pounds of fissionable material. This is all smoke and mirrors here, and we have not gotten to the bottom of it. Thanks to Mike Hersh, next week we're going to have Jamie Raskin, and we will start with Jamie and with Iran. God knows what's going to happen in the coming week. And we have also raised, by the way, which also we're not hearing much, the possibility of a general strike. We've had a global day, a No Kings Day, that involved the biggest number of people to ever participate in a simultaneous demonstration in U.S. history, which was the 5 million people that turned up for the No Kings March. Extremely significant. And I would venture to say that had a lot with Trump's decision to attack Iran, because suddenly everybody's discussing No Kings, everybody's discussing 5 million people, and the next minute we're at war. No accident there. That is not an accident. Just go back to what Otto von Bismarck did to unify Germany, among other things. Okay, we're pretty much out of time. We still have 72 people. You guys are phenomenal. We were over 130 today. Does anyone else have anything they want to chime in before we sign off? Because we've been at this for, we're approaching the 4:20 witching hour for everybody to go in and talk. David Saltman, you're exactly the guy I wanted to call in to talk about general strike. What are you thinking? Dave, you're unmuted.
Okay, I hear you. I just want to tell the people that the Tehran Times newspaper is reporting no deal on ceasefire.
Well, what a surprise. What a shock. And David, by the way, has had the
headline. They have right in their headline that Trump is lying again.
Right. I mean, how do you know Trump is lying? It was the same with Lyndon Johnson. How do you know Trump is lying? When his lips are moving. But the other thing, Dave Solomon had a great idea. Oh, yeah, here we go. Well, here's another question we have to raise. With the travel bans, can the United States really host the World Cup next year, where people want to come from all over the world to MetLife Stadium for the final? And can we really host the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles? He's going to have 30 or more countries on the no-fly list. Are these people going to come? And David Solomon has raised the idea we really need a good 20-minute documentary on the No Kings Day. That has to be documented for the future. And I hope someone will step forward. Dave's put me in touch with a great filmmaker I'm going to see on Wednesday. But we do need a permanent documentation of the No Kings Day, and so anybody wants to make that film, we need to see it. Mike Hersh has gone to AI to produce. Here's Adolf Hitler at the Berlin Olympics in 1936. Donald Trump at, God forbid, at the 28 Olympics in LA. I cannot imagine that happening. I cannot imagine the 28 Olympics with Donald Trump on the podium there. He needs to be shown giving the Elon Musk Sieg Heil. So, but Salty, let's hope we can find, if anybody on the call wants to step forward and work with us to make a good documentary film, 20 minutes long, on the No Kings Day, that would be fabulous. There's a lot of great footage out there. So there we go.
Started today. We could have it on the air by the 4th of July.
We also need to pick a date for the next major No Kings, No War demonstration. And we will invite all the MAGA people who don't want this war to happen. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'll invite you to speak. I'll invite you to stand on the platform right next to Medea Benjamin. That would be a great thing to see a Code Pink standing next to a MAGA peacenik. Along with Tucker Carlson. I shouldn't speak for you, Medea, but I would love to see it.
Well, pink and green go well together. So.
Right, a pink and green peace march. Carolyn Barcliff, you haven't spoken. Go ahead and jump in. You got to be quick. We're down to 2 minutes.
July 17th is the next big march. It's called Good Trouble Lives On, and you can find it at goodtroubleliveson.org.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And also on July 4th, Women's March is hosting or asking folks to host family and community events to celebrate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carolyn. You've been some good information. Murtaza, you're going to be pretty close to last. Go ahead. Carolyn, if you've got websites, URLs to put in the chat about those events, that would be great. July 17th, I believe, was somebody's birthday, and John Lewis's birthday. And so there's a march already called for July 17th. Go for it. Don McCann, you haven't spoken, Murtaza, and you're going to just give you 30 seconds each, please.
Okay,
Murtaza, go ahead.
So I just step out for a moment. So I don't know if we talked about this, but what's our strategy with the Dems in terms of Iran? If the war continues, there is probably a lot of support for continuing it, even amongst, or not a lot, but at least some amongst Dems.
Quick answer.
Yep.
We're supporting Ro Khanna, and then there's a Libertarian Republican Congress member who've put forward a war powers resolution. We're supporting that. Bernie has similar legislation in the Senate. We're supporting that. So
right, and AOC
watch your email box if you're signed up for PDA's emails, and we'll get that information to you. You should have already heard about it. If you have, check your spam folder if you didn't see it.
And AOC has called for impeachment, by the way.
Yeah, well, we've done that twice already, and it hasn't done diddly. Sluggo, you were right to say that we should call for Trump and Vance to both resign, like Agnew and Nixon did, because they're a couple of crooks, much worse than Agnew and Nixon.
Right. Yes. Well, bigger scale, orders of magnitude, more money. But we got to remember that Nixon did commit treason in 1968. Don McCann, you're I think the last. Real quick, please.
Okay,
Don,
real quick. Just the problem of presidents leading us into the war. And you mentioned President Johnson not telling the truth before the Vietnam War. And at 3:39 on the chat, Pacific time, I've wrote a story of how I'm a direct witness of the fact that Lyndon Johnson did lie about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Anyway, that's enough.
Well, were you there?
The first pilot that was killed in that raid was a close personal friend, and he told us that he was headed out for a very important event that he could not tell us about, but that event proved to be the Gulf of Tonkin raid, and he was the one pilot that was killed. And
well, come back next week and tell us about that, will you please? Next week, thanks to Mike, we'll have Jamie Raskin with us. Don, good to hear from you. Everybody, it's 4:20. It's time to go toke up. And no nukes. This was a very, very productive discussion. We had, again, more than 130 people. There's still, for God's sake, 66 of you. We have the longest attention span in America. And we will see you again next week with Congressperson Jamie Raskin, and Don will tell us about the Gulf of Tonkin. And thank you, Kevin and Carl, for filling us in on the nuke stuff. Very, very important. No nukes, everybody. No war. We'll see you next week. And we'll be plotting out the date for the general strike. Take care.
No nukes, no fascism.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve and Mike, for co-hosting.